In 1813, appraisers surveyed Daniel Skinner Sr.'s estate. The ledger suggests a modest frontiersman, cataloging survival tools like a handsaw and hatchets. But halfway down is an anomaly, a 29-gallon cask of rum, valued at over $32. This was a staggering volume of hard liquor for a single household in the remote upper Delaware wilderness. To find context for this anomaly, we examine Skinner's last will and testament. The document reveals significant geographic reach. Beyond his Wayne County mansion, Skinner bequeathed a house and barn in Newburgh, New York. He also left his heirs corporate shares in the Great Bend and Cockington Turnpike stock, an incredibly modern asset for the era. This level of capital and cross-state investment stands in sharp contrast to the reality of the Wayne County frontier, a region defined by dense forests and a total lack of developed roads. Understanding how a man built this empire from the middle of the woods requires going back to 1754 to look at a logistical nightmare. Daniel Skinner arrived at the early Cushatunk settlement as a young man with experience as a coastwise sailor. While in the Philadelphia harbor, Skinner realized that the Delaware Valley was a massive potential source of supply for the shipbuilding industry, which desperately needed tall, straight timber for masts. The upper Delaware had the white pine trees Philadelphia required, but it had no infrastructure to move them. There were no roads capable of transporting massive logs through the roadless wilderness to tidewater. Whoever could figure out how to transport that timber to the city would control the keys to the region's wealth. In 1763, Skinner attempted to put loose logs adrift in the river, following them in a canoe. The experiment failed when the timber ran aground on islands and rocks. He developed an engineering solution by hewing the logs and constructing an interconnected raft using a mortise and spindle pin system. Using the high spring freshet, Skinner successfully steered this massive structure through treacherous channels to Philadelphia. This successful voyage birthed the commercial rafting and lumbering industry that would define the region for a century. Because he proved the river could be navigated with a heavy cargo, the community bestowed upon him a unique title, Lord High Admiral of the Delaware. The title carried absolute authority. By frontier consensus, no other pioneer was permitted to run a raft down the river without the admiral's explicit consent. Skinner leveraged this monopoly into a mandatory tribute. To work as a forehand on a raft, an applicant had to present Skinner with a bottle of wine or liquor. To gain the privilege of being a steersman, the applicant had to pay an additional premium, a second bottle of liquor. This explains the clues in the estate inventory. The 29 gallons of rum were the accumulated wealth of a man who had turned a wild river into his own personal toll gate. By the time of Skinner's death in 1813, the region had been transformed by the industry he founded. He had survived the early, dangerous years of Indian conflicts and fortified blockhouses, living to see the frontier become a booming commercial economy. The signature at the bottom of his 1813 last will and testament is the mark of a self-made pioneer. The widespread real estate and turnpike stocks he left behind were the direct economic results of his rafting monopoly and merchant travels. Daniel Skinner's probate records are the physical receipts of a man who looked at an impassable, raging river and saw a highway.